From the snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas to the sunshine coasts of Kanyakumari, from the verdant forests of the Sundarbans to the golden deserts of Thar, our country is a kaleidoscope of cultures, traditions, and knowledge. Knowledge that visions for the well being of all under Viksit Bharat 2047 mission, as aptly quoted in the Sanskrit verse सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चन दुःखभाग् भवेत् ओम शांति शांति शांति. Very charismatic and a very marvelous afternoon to the honorable chief guest, galaxy of intellectuals, colleagues and audience. Today unfolds like a majestic swan in flight, a grand sea of opportunities and a sparkling star in the sky. Let's revel in the inspiring voyage of India's scientific panorama. Ladies and gentlemen, I, Ananya Banerjee, on behalf of Indian National Science Academy, feel privileged to extend my sincere welcome to you all for the eagerly anticipated INSA Distinguished Public Lecture Series. We are gratified and honored to witness the magnanimous presence of the Honorable Chief Guest Dr. Shekhar Mande, former Director General CSIR and Secretary Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, Government of India. With tremendous exhilaration, I request Dr. Brajesh Pandey and Professor Narendra Mehra to escort our esteemed guest towards the stage and grace today's magnanimous event. Ladies and gentlemen, the Indian National Science Academy is an illustrious establishment which stands as a beacon of scientific prowess under the aegis of the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, dedicated to fostering the flames of scientific inquiry, nurturing the seeds of talent, and harnessing the boundless power of knowledge for the greater good of humanity and the nation. Steering the course of scientific deliberations, INSA orchestrates a symphony of seminars, conferences, workshops, and lectures delving into the core agendas that shape our national science and technology ecosystem. To commence this astounding lecture session today, I cordially invite esteemed dignitaries to ignite the ceremonial lamp symbolizing our odyssey towards enlightenment. As the flame of the lamp comes together, may it remind us of the verse, Shubham karoti kalyanam arogyam dhan sampada shatru buddhi vinashaya deep jyotir namostute. With our hearts filled with gratitude, I now request Professor Narendra Mehra, Vice President International Affairs, Indian National Science Academy, to extend the token of gratitude to the Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Shekhar Mande. I now request Dr. Brajesh Pandey, Executive Director, Indian National Science Academy, to present the Angavastram to our Honorable Chief Guest. Ladies and gentlemen, INSA Distinguished Public Lecture Series is one of our initiatives that embodies the Academy's unwavering commitment to bridging the gap between science and society, inspiring young minds and igniting the flames of curiosity in students. With thought-provoking lectures delivered by notable visionaries in the science and technology ecosystem, today we aim to expand our horizon of knowledge with the lecture entitled Viksit Bharat at 2047, the role of science and technology, to be delivered by Dr. Shekhar Mande. विकसित भारत 2047 का उद्देश्य है भारत को एक उत्कृष्ट, विकसित और समृद्ध राष्ट्र के रूप में स्थापित करना, जो समाज की हर श्रेणी के लोगों के लिए न्याय, समानता और विकास के अवसरों को सुनिश्चित करता है। इस दिशा में हमें भारत को वैज्ञानिकी और प्रौद्योगिकी क्षेत्र में एक विश्वस्तरीय नेतृत्व स्थापित करने के लक्ष्य लेकर रेखांकित किया गया है, जो एक सशक्त, सुरक्षित और संवेदनशील भारत की दिशा में महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाएंगे। एक उत्साह के साथ जय जवान, जय किसान, जय अनुसंधान। Moving ahead with the event, it is my sincere pleasure to invite Professor Narendra Mehra, Vice President International Affairs INSA, to embolden us with his words of wisdom and weave the tapestry of today's event with his welcoming remarks.
Thank you very much. At the very outset, I would like to welcome you all on behalf of the Indian National Science Academy to this INSA distinguished lecture today, which is fourth in the series. We started this in January of 2024, and the very first lecture was given by Dr. Somnath. You already know, all of you know Dr. Somnath, Chandrayaan. We went to the moon due to his efforts. And the second lecture was given by Dr. Balam Bhargav. If you have seen the film Vaccine War, how many of you saw the film Vaccine War? 1, 2, that's about all, because उसमें गाने नहीं थे, उसमें सलमान खान नहीं था, इसलिए बहुत कम लोगों ने देखी. But that film basically talked about how India produced vaccines during the pandemic, and India was one of those very few countries around the world, maybe only total 6 countries around the world which had their own vaccine. And we not only had our own vaccine, but we also gave it to more than 100 countries around the world. And then of course the third lecture was given by Dr. Arvind Kumar, and today we are very happy to welcome amongst us none other than Dr. Shekhar Mande. I don't think he needs introduction to this audience, but I see a lot of young people over here, which is very, very exciting for me. Do you know this young crowd over here, that the United Nations General Assembly has declared the next decade, the decade from 2024 to 2033, as the International Decade for Science and Development. And this is going to open up new challenges and new opportunities for you. I would say that new opportunities for you. So you people must go to the website of UNGA and see what does this SSD mean, and how can you as an individual get benefited out of that. We started this distinguished lecture series primarily with the aim, because we wanted to make it as a platform for uh, promoting scientific temperament among young students and researchers. Our aim is to sort of prepare or encourage the scientists of tomorrow. Um, Community engagement, capacity building, discussion on national agenda of development in science and technology. You should be aware of how much does India spend every year from the budget that we have in India. How much does the budget go to S&T, science and technology? And where do we fare? Where do we compare ourselves in relation to others? What are the other countries doing? Why are we not getting Nobel Prizes in India now? Now that we have already been independent for 75 years, I think time has come that we have to think big, start thinking big, and that's the message that Dr. Shekhar Mande is going to infuse in you. The Viksit Bharat, what are we going to see by the year 2047? I hope, and I'm sure you are all going to be there by the time, the young, really very bouncy investigators over there, those of you who actually remain active in science. Viksit Bharat is the dream of India now in the Amrit Kal, and as our Honorable Prime Minister keeps saying that Viksit Bharat is our goal for sustainable development. Everybody talks about sustainable development. Again, you should look into the website of the UN, which has given those 17 goals of sustainable development, covering all aspects of life, including health. I, of course, come from the health background, so including health and everything else. And the world at this point of time, the world is going through what we call polycrisis. We had the meeting of the BRICS just a few months ago, where myself and Dr. Shekhar Mande was there in South Africa. South Africa was the chair of the BRICS, and there the main theme was polycrisis. And amongst those, I have actually picked up two of them, which I feel are going to be very important for us in terms of sustainable development. One is the climate change, and you all are feeling the effects of climate change. The other, from the purely medical point of view, AMR, what we call antimicrobial resistance. Somebody falls sick at home, everybody in the house becomes a doctor. Oh, I have heard about this antibiotic. You should take this antibiotic. Even if it is a viral infection, it's a common virus. People start taking antibiotics because the antibiotics are just available off the shelf. And we are now at a stage that we are unable to treat even diseases like pneumonia, common infection like pneumonia, with the drug that we used to have. And now we have to look for new drugs. So similarly, there are polycrises in all aspects of life: economic crisis, societal, and several of those things over there. And I'm sure Dr. Shekhar Mande is going to talk to you about Amrit Kal, from now onwards, the 25 years from now onwards, and what are we going to say? What would India look like in 2047, particularly in the field of science and technology? Now, I don't want to stand between you and the speaker, as a very eminent speaker, and is going to give you a number of good examples, but please keep noting the questions that you might have in your mind. Don't get out of the hall without getting your doubts cleared by him, and make sure that you are with him in his thinking about 2047. Thank you so much for all of you for coming over here, and I now invite Dr. Shekhar Mande to come to the stage. Is the invitation going to be me, or you going to speak? Okay. She has some more to speak. No, she has some more to speak about you.
Thank you, sir, for generously disseminating your profound prudence with our audience and broadening our horizon of knowledge. With great honor and privilege, I introduce to you all our esteemed chief guest, Dr. Shekhar Mande, a titan in the realm of science, technology, and administration. Assuming the mantle of leadership as the former Director General CSIR and Secretary Department of Scientific and Industrial Research Government of India, Dr. Mande charted a course of unparalleled progress and innovation. His stewardship was characterized by a steadfast commitment to fostering a culture of scientific excellence, innovation, and technological advancement, transforming India into a global powerhouse of scientific endeavor. Dr. Mande's influence transcends the confines of research institutions, extending into the realm of policy formulation and academic governance. He has numerous recognitions to his credit. To name a few: Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize for Science and Technology, B.M. Birla Young Scientist Award, Fellow at Indian National Science Academy, Delhi, National Academy of Sciences, Allahabad, and Indian Academy of Sciences, Bangalore. His career spans continents and accolades that adorn the walls of Indian science. Dr. Mande epitomizes intellectual brilliance and visionary leadership. His tenure as the director of the National Center for Cell Science in Pune witnessed the convergence of innovation and excellence, propelling Indian science to new heights of achievement. Hailing from humble beginnings, his quest for enlightenment led him to the hallowed halls of the IISc. Venturing beyond borders, he also honed his expertise as a postdoctoral fellow in the Netherlands, enriching his understanding with a global perspective. Presently, he serves as the esteemed national president of Vigyan Bharati, a prominent grassroots science initiative in India infused with the essence of indigenous innovation and self-reliance. His sage counsel has guided the trajectory of Indian science towards a brighter and a prosperous future. Thus, he serves as a beacon of inspiration whose indomitable spirit and unwavering commitment to excellence continues to illuminate the path towards a future defined by knowledge, innovation, and boundless possibilities. Today, as we stand on the new era of national discovery, I now invite the distinguished chief guest Dr. Shekhar Mande to broaden our horizon of knowledge with his core cognizance, inspiring generations to come.
What's your name? I say?
Ananya Banerjee.
And thank you, Ananya, for the kind introduction. I was just asking her whether one of her teachers was Shashi Tharoor in her college or something, the way she was speaking. But thank you, Ananya. Thank you, Dr. Mehra, for being here, and many of the fellows, Dr. Banerjee, Dr. Pental. It's a great pleasure to be here amongst all of you, and very good to see the younger audience in the hall. As Dr. Mehra told you, that Indian National Science Academy started this distinguished lecture series some time ago, basically to bring achievements of Indian science and technology to all of you, how SNT is actually contributing to the progress of our society. And there are many distinguished people who are fellows of the Indian National Science Academy who have contributed variety of different areas, and their contributions have made India what it is today. You know, some of them are present here in the front row, and we are very proud that with a collection of people like that, India is what it is today. But at the same time, we are very acutely aware that we have just entered what we call as the Amrit Kal, and I'm very glad to see younger audience here. And I would like to reiterate what Dr. Mehra said, is we look forward to this Amrit Kal, and the responsibility is on the shoulders of those of you who are in the audience to carry that legacy forward, what we are here. So what I wanted to tell you was essentially what India's aspirations are for 2047, what kind of scientific and technological advances are taking place towards meeting those aspirations. And although many of it may not be deep science, but indeed there are applications of science for the progress of our society. And as what we have always maintained, and many people who know the area they maintain, is that scientific research and advancement in knowledge has a global character, right? Scientific principles are defined globally. But the applications of science, when they come, what we call as technology at times has to be local. Different technologies have to be applied depending upon the local contexts, and there's the examples that I have chosen to give in the coming few slides. So basically what I want to tell you is that when India was still under colonial occupation, there were a large group of people who were fired as much as my previous generation and our generation to see that India actually becomes a very prosperous country, right? And although India was under colonial occupation and India had been deprived of lot of her wealth, India had been deprived of lot of resources by the colonial powers, and therefore when the British left India in 1947, our total contribution to world's GDP had dropped to about 2%. Starting from in 1800, if you say the colonial occupation began in 1757, symbolically with the Battle of Plassey, in 1800 India's contribution to world GDP was about 23%. So that much wealth had been robbed off of India. And if I ask you a rough ballpark figure that how much money was made by the colonial powers in terms of how many million, billion dollars or rupees or whatever, would someone be willing to give me that particular figure? Anyone in the audience? What figure do you think we were robbed of? How much wealth? You will be surprised. How much? You will be surprised. Today we aspire to be a 5 trillion economy. You would have heard this word, 5 trillion economy, right? Today India GDP is roughly about 3.6 trillion dollars. We want to be $5 trillion economy. We were robbed of $55 trillion. 10 times more of that we were actually robbed of, and that's how the colonial powers became rich themselves and we became poor at their expense. Now that's a harsh reality. Alright, but in that background a large number of stalwarts actually rose up, and the foremost among them were people like J.N. Tata. J.N. Tata exactly about 150 years ago decided that he is going to start cotton mills in Nagpur, what was called then Empress Mills. Exactly 150 years ago in 1874 he began a cotton mill in Nagpur. But then he set his sight on three principal things. He said, if India were to be an industrialized nation, our infrastructure must be very robust, and for that you need a robust steel industry. And that's how the Jamshedpur plant, what we see today, Tata Steel, that has come up. Number two, he said that we must have a robust power supply to our cities, and he took Bombay as an example. And he actually set up a power supply, and that's how Tata Power came into being. And the third thing, he said that India must have a robust educational system. And what would J.N. Tata do? You'd be surprised to know that what he would do to set up an institute of eminence, was through his conversation with none other than Swami Vivekananda when they accidentally met on a ship going from Tokyo to Toronto. When they met, they discussed how do we actually put in best educational practices of our tradition for our people. And they set up what today is called as Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. So Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore came up because of the vision of J.N. Tata. But there were other people who use science and technology for meeting the dreams of making India a great nation. And one of the foremost among them is Acharya Prafulchandra Ray, right, what is shown here. Acharya P.C. Ray was one of the very well-known chemists. His work on mercury nitride was very famous. But he was also fired by indigenization of our industry, technologies, and so on and so forth. And with that firepower, he started what is called as Bengal Chemicals and Pharmaceutical Works, what he started at that time. Is my mic on, this one? Hello? Yeah, okay. So he started in 1903 this Bengal Works and Pharmaceuticals. But we were constantly being told that our knowledge, the modern knowledge, essentially came from the West. We were told that we were a nation of snake charmers, we were a nation of witchcrafts, and that was the impression that were actually being left on Indian people. And in that background, Acharya P.C. Ray rose up And then he wrote a very profound textbook, what is now called as the History of Hindu Chemistry in 1903, saying that chemistry has always been very well developed in our part of the world. Medicine has been very well developed in our part of the world. Mathematics and astronomy have been very well developed in our part of the world. You know, metallurgy, Indians were actually practicing metallurgy for thousands of years. The lost wax technique that you see today was developed in India in something like 2,500 to 3,000 BC. And it's amazing. So much knowledge existed in India, but we are being robbed of the usefulness of that knowledge for our society. And that's what colonial powers did to our subcontinent. And through that, people like Acharya Praful Chandra Ray, and they rose up with a very fervor nationalistic spirit, and then started working towards indigenization of industry. People like J.N. Tata, Acharya Praful Chandra Ray, there's somebody called Khwaja Ahmad Hamid of Sipla, and so on and so forth. And then when we became independent, we had gained some kind of a confidence. At the time of independence, India had barely 19 universities. 19 universities is what the entire country had. And therefore, we had to make sure that we put in place a very robust system of education. And what India would do then is actually start a series of organizations in the next 10 years or so. First of all, 1950s began the formation of different IITs. In 1950, IIT Kharagpur was formed, and by 1960, we had 5 different Indian institutes of technologies that were in place, and are world class today. All of you will agree with me that IITs are absolute world class organizations today. They can parallel with some of the best organizations anywhere in the world. And that revolution started sometimes in 1950s. The University Grants Commission came into being in 1953, and large number of state and central universities, they were actually started being formed. Simultaneously, we had formation of CSIR already in 1942, but large number of other departments, they started being formed. For example, the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, the Indian Council of Medical Research, DRDO, Department of Atomic Energy, all of them were formed in this particular period. And one of the last ones was Department of Biotechnology in 1986. Together, this ecosystem has actually driven India's entire development post-independence. And if you can actually name one factor that has made India what we are today, such a progressive nation, and that one factor unequivocally is science and technology, and nothing else. Science and technology has played an absolutely important role in the progress of India, and that has happened because of large number of national labs on one side, the universities and IITs and all on the other side, and some of the strategic organizations such as DRDO, Department of Space, Department of Atomic Energy and all. And combined together that with the industries and startup ecosystem that what we have today, India is what it is today. Today, we are a nation that even the Western nations look forward to us for many different things. For example, in our own lifetimes, and I am going to quote example of last 5 years, so UPI gateway of payment is so popular in India, and I am sure many of you who go and pay for your tea or coffee or samosa, you always pay through your UPI, right? You don't use cash anymore, you don't use cards anymore. And if you want to actually distinguish people who are NRIs who visit India and the people who are staying in India, the main distinguishing character is the NRIs still pay by card and cash, while the Indians living here now pay by UPI. We don't carry cash and cards anywhere anymore. And the Western nations are actually looking forward to India so that this can be implemented even in countries like Germany and France and so on and so forth. Now that is the power of our society, what we have done since independence. That Western nations have now started looking forward to India. When we started our space program in 1970s, it was criticized heavily because we are not successful in sending rockets in space. On today's date, all the Western nations line up for sending their satellites to Indian space system. Anytime there is a rocket going up, the Western nations literally line up for sending their satellites through our rockets. Isn't that wonderful? And that actually is what the power of science and technology has taken India to. When the COVID-19 actually stuck, it is this confidence in science and technology that we had amongst ourselves that we decided that we will tackle COVID-19 on our own. We thought that we will not depend upon other nations to tell us what kind of vaccines, what kind of diagnostics, what kind of drugs to be actually developed. And that confidence, actually I am going to give you two examples of that. One of the things that we did, we were among the first nations to recognize that COVID virus is spread through aerosols. WHO kept on telling us COVID virus spreads through touch or contaminated surfaces. But COVID virus spreads through aerosols, encapsulated in aerosols. And that we were among the first nations to have recognized that. And based on that, the organization that I had the privilege of working with, the CSIR, issued guidelines for ventilation of buildings. And these guidelines have been accepted in the government that how buildings should be ventilated so that the spread of the virus can be limited in an auditorium such as this. And not only that, you should be very proud if any one of you rides a Mande Bharat Express that is shown here today. Any Mande Bharat Express in India, if you ride, you will find in that Mande Bharat Express the air that is circulated within the compartment is treated with the same solution that CSIR developed at that time, and that is what is called as the UVC light. Every Vande Bharat Express, every coach of Vande Bharat Express today has a UVC light, and that is taken care so that our population is at minimum risk of any airborne infections. Not only COVID, but any other airborne infection which might be there, we will be protected against that. When the oxygen shortage came up in the country, we made our first what is called as the pressure vacuum absorption technique here, pressure vacuum swing absorption, and these oxygen cylinders were made in different laboratories of CSIR and DRDO, and literally about 1,000 plants were made by CSIR and DRDO together and distributed all across the country, so that every district in the country now has an oxygen generation plant. So this is totally indigenous technology, what is called as PVSA, and this actually is much cheaper than what is observed somewhere else. At the same time, when we started running out of hospital space, our technologies were such that we could make hospitals at a notice of something like 8 days. In 8 days, if we were told that hospital is running out, our people were actually able to go and make these makeshift hospitals. Now these are called makeshift hospitals, but they are good to last for next 10-20 years. And this example I show you from Kangra in Himachal Pradesh, but large part of the country, even in Delhi, for example, if you go to Safdarjung Hospital, in the car park of Safdarjung Hospital, we have made a hospital which is about 45 bedded. And large number of places like Haryana, Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, Leh, Ladakh, Jammu and all, we have actually gone and made hospitals such as this, 500 bedded, 100 bedded, DRDO has even made 1000 bedded hospital and so on and so forth. This was the confidence when COVID pandemic came to India, and with that confidence, India made its own vaccine, and India made sure that large population of India, more than 98% population, got vaccinated. We did not face the same resistance as many of the advanced economies in the world, what we today call quote unquote advanced countries. They had resistance in vaccinating all the individuals or the nation's citizens of those countries. India did not face those problems. We had our indigenous vaccines which actually were made, and we were able to vaccinate those people. Aren't we proud of this? Aren't all of us proud of our scientific community? That we were able to tackle this pandemic on our own. We were on our feet and we were able to do that. Now with that, now our vision is much bigger. Having gone through attaining independence and having gone through the confidence of 75 years that our scientific community and our technological community together can do wonders, that's actually our confidence comes in, that we want to traverse the journey of the next 25 years. And that confidence I would like to have in the younger generation in the audience today. I am going to show you some challenges that we are going to face in the next 25 years and what are the steps that our scientific community has taken for that. And the challenges, as Dr. Mehra correctly pointed out, should be seen in the context of United Nations, what we call as Sustainable Development Goals. You know, United Nations in 2015 defined 17 sustainable goals such as this, and one of the things that was agreed upon in 2015 was that the temperature rise of the world would not exceed 2 degrees Celsius by 2030, and we would do our best to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. That was in 2015 we agreed to do that. And the time limit we had given to ourselves was 2030. And temperature rise since the pre-industrial levels, right? When the industrial revolution began, sometimes in the 19th century, since then, that would be the temperature rise. The unfortunate news is that about a month ago, World Meteorological Organization has released data saying that we have already enhanced in excess of 1.45 degrees Celsius temperature rise since the pre-independent levels. That's a very unfortunate news, which essentially means that our efforts have been short of what we want to do. That also means that although our intentions were good, we have really not been good in implementing our intentions. And that's one of the major challenges of your generation, that how we are going to actually limit the damage that we have done to the environment, and how actually we are going to sustain our environment in the future. So the 17 sustainable goals, one of them, the first one is no poverty. And would you believe how much poverty India has alleviated in the last 15 years? It's just amazing. It says the second goal is end hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition. India has lifted out 415 million people out of multidimensional poverty in the last 15 years. It's an absolutely amazing number. It's close to the population of Europe and more than the population of the United States. Our science has done wonders to our country. We have lifted more than 400 million people out of multidimensional poverty. But we have not reached the goal. We'll still have a large number of people who live in multidimensional poverty, abject poverty, and once again, the challenge before your generation is to lift them out of poverty, so that when we become a Viksit Bharat in 2047, at that time, we don't want to see a single person in the country who is poor, and we want every person in the country to have sufficient food to eat and a shelter to live by. That's our objective in 2047. If you look at Sustainable Development Goal number 3, which is good health and well-being, I want to give an example. All the health parameters that we talk today are essentially derived from the parameters obtained from the Western countries. For example, to give an example, if you talk of say any particular cancer, all right, and ask a question, why is this cancer caused, all right? So people typically look at mutations in the chromosomes, why this cancer is caused. All the mutations that have been mapped till now, till date, are all derived from Western population. We do not know what are the driving mutations of cancer for the Indian population. If you look at multiple different health parameters, what is the body mass index of Indians, and compared to that, what is the lipid content of Indian bodies? There is a huge mismatch between the Western population and our population. We don't know what the Indian parameters are, and we must map Indian parameters very aggressively in the coming time. In the next 25 years, we must do that. And the first steps we have taken towards that in what we call today in India, when I was part of CSIR, we started something called the Phenome India project, in which 10,000 people across the country are going to be monitored for their health parameters for next 20 years. And different health parameters, variety of different things, with the livers, the lungs, the kidneys, the skin, and the gut health, and all kinds of parameters. Actually, we are trying to map those, and the first results of those are already very exciting. We are halfway through collection of samples. As we speak today, the samples are being collected in the National Physical Laboratory in Pusa, in the Pusa complex if you go there, and we have collected almost 8,000 samples as on today, and we have done large number of different kinds of tests for all of them. And in fact, you will not believe, when we are doing tests on people, many people did not know that they have certain kind of disorder. And I want to give my own example. I thought I was a perfectly healthy individual till January 19th, when I went and gave my own sample for this Phenome India project. And it turns out my fasting blood sugar was 250 and my acylated hemoglobin was 11.5, which is actually severely diabetic, and I was not aware that I was severely diabetic. And like me, there were at least 200 other people out of these 10,000 did not know that they had this kind of disorder. In fact, one of the persons had an abnormal ECG, and we told that person that you are actually undergoing a heart attack. And that is the problem with our population. We rarely go to the doctors for doing regular health checkups. Dr. Mehra will agree with me. And he also told me that we should always do regular checkups beyond a particular age. Once you cross a particular age, the metabolic disorders start setting in, and we must actually do that. And this is actually what we are doing now. For 10,000 people for next 20 years, we are going to collect variety of different parameters, and we hope by doing so, the Indian population would be mapped at its minutest details for different health abnormalities. One example of that is what I actually want to give you here, is that this is something for what we call as liver cirrhosis, in which a large amount of fat actually gets accumulated in the liver, and we found that large parts of India, and we have actually roughly done that in north, west, east and south. Actually, this is a fairly scary number, that so many people actually have active liver cirrhosis. We are not aware that we have such a large epidemic that is coming up, right? So all our population, or a substantial part of our population, actually suffering from diseases that we are really not aware is actually exist in the population today. So this is one of the things that we thought we must do. But one of the very important parameters is water. I don't know how many of you are aware. Have you heard of the water problem in Bangalore that is going on right now? Right? Why do you think that water problem is there? One of the reasons for the water problem in Bangalore is unchecked growth of our cities. Absolutely unchecked growth of our cities, in which we have had total failure of civic planning. And the concrete jungles that we have created have actually robbed of land where water could seep through and recharge groundwater surface. That is one of the main reasons that has actually happened there. And I actually want to show you this particular graph, that 1960 there was abundant water available in India. Now this is a report that INSA had commissioned a few years ago. This is taken directly from Indian National Science Academy's report where we are sitting right now. And one of the things it said that 1960 India had abundant water. By the year 2000, we became a water stress country, and very rapidly, another 10 or 15 years, we are moving towards water scarce country. This is a very, very scary situation. So the onus upon our generation and the onus upon your generation is that how we are going to mitigate this particular situation. Rampant use of water, our inability to recharge groundwater, and inability to actually use sustainable water are actually the ones which are leading to this kind of a thing. And we must find proper solutions for all of this. I want to give you an example how it can be done. Now this is an example that we tried out in a village called Chotuppal near Hyderabad. Alright. And if you want to recharge some of the ground, what we call as aquifers, the large water bodies that exist below the surface of the earth, the large lakes and rivers, they exist below the surface of the earth, and it's important that we recharge them. But when we recharge them, we have to recharge them at specific locations so that the water would seep through at those aquifers. If you do rampantly anywhere water recharging, these aquifers will not get charged. And we actually located our Hyderabad lab, the National Geophysical Research Institute. They located places where it could be recharged, and they went and made lakes there in an area of roughly about 100 square feet or something. And today, in about 5 years, what was agricultural land or what was actually paddy growing land increased from 12% to 30%. The total net reduction from arid land went from 78% to 60%. So what we see actually is a miracle, and the miracle has happened because we were able to locate what are the underground sources of water or bodies, and we were able to specifically recharge those bodies. What we had seen before we undertook the project was a massive migration from this village to Hyderabad. After our success of the project in about 5 years, we are seeing reverse migration from city to the people coming back to the village, and now they are growing paddy regularly in that particular village. It's amazing. And buoyed by the success of this, we contacted Ministry of Jal Shakti, and Honorable Minister Mr. Shekhar at that time requested us that can you do the same thing in Rajasthan. And what we have done today is that entire Rajasthan, north part of Gujarat and south part of Haryana, we have now mapped for the possible underground sources of water, and what we want to do now in the coming years is recharge those underground surfaces, underground bodies of water. If we are successful in that, I have no doubt that we would have actually solved to some extent water problem even in our arid regions. For water, there is another problem. The way we treat water, and all of you are from Delhi, I don't have to tell you, if you go to Yamuna, you invariably close your nose. You don't want to actually have the foul smell of Yamuna there, and that's because we are continuously polluting our rivers. Now that problem arises because the municipal waste that is generated, especially the solid waste, is usually dumped in flowing rivers. Right? In many cities in India, including Bangalore, it is dumped into rivers. The technology for sewage treatment plants is Western technology, is a very capital intensive technology, and it's very difficult to maintain that. And we have local solutions, and that's where exactly what I meant earlier, that there are local solutions for technologies. And we were posed with these problems during Kumbh Mela in Prayagraj some years ago. To clean up the nallas that lead to the Prayagraj rivers, and we were told that nallas look like this, and you can see how dirty it is. And then we installed there what are called as in situ treatment plants in this sewage water. And the in situ sewage plants consisted of removing solid waste, capturing that with a grill, and then putting floating plants over it, and so on and so forth. What we saw is that the incoming water looks like this and the outgoing water looks like this. That's amazing. So the Prayagraj could be cleaned literally at a notice of 6 months. And what we need to do is to scale up solutions like this. So tomorrow, if you want to clean up Yamuna in Delhi, the best solution would be to have in situ treatments of water plants, something like this, and not necessarily a sewage treatment plant. If we are able to do that, I think we would have done a miracle once again. One of the major challenges that we are facing for the future is energy and environment. And the Sustainable Development Goal 7 talks of ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all. And we are all very proud that the Honorable Prime Minister, about 2 years ago, on the 15th August from the ramparts of the Red Fort, he declared what is called as the Green Hydrogen Mission of India. We are very proud that at the highest level in the country, we have such a support for science. And green hydrogen essentially is hydrogen, which is deemed to be a fuel of the future. And we actually have now demonstrated that on this fuel of the future, that is hydrogen, we can run buses. And about a month ago, we also showed in Cochin that we can even run ferries based on hydrogen fuel. So we are now set actually for another revolution that is unfolding as we speak today. That all our transport sector would now transform itself from the fossil fuels to a green fuel for the future. And that revolution is just unfolding as we speak today. Infrastructure is another goal of Sustainable Development Goal. The 9th Sustainable Development Goal says, build resilient infrastructure and promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization and foster innovation. Much of our industry or industry all over the world has not followed sustainable practices. To give an example, one of the major outputs of steel industry is what is called as the steel slag. You know, the ash that comes out during processing of steel, that is called steel slag. And our lab in Delhi on Mathura Road, something called Central Road Research Institute, they were able to show that the steel slag can be used for making road constructions. And country's first national highway using steel slag was recently inaugurated on the Mumbai-Goa National Park. We are very proud, and as we speak once again today, the Border Road Organization or BRO is making use of steel slag from multiple steel plants in the country, whether it be JSW, whether it be Tata Steel, whether it be SAIL. They are using steel slag from this for making roads in India. Right? This technology was not developed abroad. This technology was developed in Delhi, in the Central Road Research Institute, on Mathura Road, not very far away from here. And we should be extremely proud, our generation should be extremely proud that our scientists are continuously innovating to form this kind of technologies such as what I have shown you here. Other thing about resilient infrastructure is about earthquakes. We should all be aware that Delhi sits on a zone which is likely to get a major earthquake anytime in future. Delhi, alright. In fact, the entire base of Himalayas, you start all the way from Jammu and Kashmir to all the way you go to northeast, the entire base of Himalayas is continuously under the threat of a major earthquake. That is because India was a separate continent, India was a part of Africa at one point of time, and it broke off as a continent, and that continent moved very fast towards Asia, and towards what we call as the Tibetan plate, we collided against that. And as the two plates collided, the Himalayas rose literally through ashes. Himalayas were once an ocean, and they actually rose from the ocean to what they are today, and therefore seismically is an extremely active region. Delhi is a part of that. How do you make sure that all our buildings in places like Delhi are earthquake resilient, right? God forbidden, if the earthquake were to come to any of the major cities in the north today, many of our buildings are not earthquake resilient, and buildings might actually collapse like a pack of cards. Literally like a pack of cards, they are likely to collapse. We have to make sure that we actually make earthquake resilient buildings, and for that we have actually made a map of earthquake risk map in the north, entire north, but we have also made earthquake resilient buildings recently in Nepal. The government of Nepal approached government of India for help in that after the deadly earthquake some about 6-7 years ago, and at that time the two countries agreed that India would help Nepal in building earthquake resilient infrastructure. And our lab in Roorkee, the Central Building Research Institute, they went there and made multiple buildings. For example, this is the library of the Tribhuvan Das University, or this is one of the schools that they built up, and multiple schools, 70 schools, one library, and a large number of hospitals have now been built by India, principally through the efforts of Central Building Research Institute in Roorkee. And what we see here today, Honorable External Affairs Minister of India is actually dedicating one of these buildings which is built, which is earthquake resilient. We have to replicate this success for India. All the earthquake prone zones of India must be converted into earthquake resilient structures, and that's a challenge for our generation once again. And the last of the sustainable development goals that I would like to talk about is goal 13, which is climate action. I already told you that World Meteorological Organization has released a report a month ago saying that the temperature rise since the pre-industrial level is 1.45 degrees centigrade now, and we have our challenges. For example, you would be surprised that lot of environmental damage is done by the emissions of gases like carbon dioxide, by methane. These are the principal greenhouse gases that we actually emit in the process of what we call quote unquote development. And the industries which contribute to that, for example, is the transportation sector. That's one of the major things. The buildings, there's another major sector. The steel, there's another sector. And power, if it uses fossil power, for example coal or something, or gas, is another sector. Agriculture is another major sector. These are all the sectors which contribute to emission of greenhouse gases. Steel is one of them. Now if you were to ask to making steel a green process, how would you do that? And all over the world people agree that making steel, you should avoid using coal as a thing that actually goes into making steel, but rather what we could do is what is called as a direct reduction of iron using either hydrogen, or instead of using iron ore mines, we use what is called as scrap iron, or iron we actually use from what has already been used earlier. Now the availability of scrap iron in China and Europe is very high, but in India is not that high, and therefore the technological solutions that we evolve for steel industry have to be local solutions. Now that's the point I'm emphasizing again and again, that the technologies for making steel have to be local in the coming time, and this essentially captures how India is different from the Western nations in terms of making steel. And then once again it's a challenge to our generation, and we can do that making green steel is either avoiding carbon altogether in making steel, or evolve processes which capture and utilize carbon, or otherwise we can also use scrap utilization and so on and so forth. So these are the kind of things that we could actually do for this. So in a sense, what we have been talking about in the last more than half an hour is we have a dream. Our generation has a dream, and I don't know whether I would be alive in 2047 or not, and some of us in the front row, we are not very sure how long we are going to be alive, but we have a dream for you. Our generation dreams for our country, and we want you to realize our dream, and that dream is of Viksit Bharat. At 2047, we want to see India as one of the most prosperous nations around the world. We want to recapture our glory of 1700s and 1800s, and a path for that would be set up collaborations between industry, academia and government. Path for that would be continuously engage different stakeholders, society, scientific organizations, industry, government, so that we can actually frequently decide issues need immediate tackling. Path for that is to promote innovation through having technological parks and incubators. Path for that would be to have sustainable processes and inclusivity, so that, and path for that would be to promote younger leadership that is present amongst you in the audience. And towards realize this particular dream, when I was part of CSIR, we had prepared a vision document for CSIR, because CSIR is one of the largest S&T organizations in the country, and this is a vision document that we had prepared, one for 2030, one for 2042 when CSIR completes 100 years, and one for 2047 when India itself completes 100 years. And this map actually clearly defines what is the roadmap for India's science and technology, so that we can realize this particular dream. And through the audience here today, I would like to urge INSA that INSA may also collaborate with Indian Academy of Science Bangalore, or the National Academy of Sciences India Allahabad, or the Indian National Academy of Engineering, or National Academy of Agricultural Sciences, or the National Academy of Medical Sciences. All of us should collaborate and define our path for a Viksit Bharat in 2047. And if we are actually able to define this particular vision, what role science and technology plays in 2047 or towards achieving this particular goal, I think we would have made our things easier, bit easier for your generation, and then we hope that your generation will carry forward the legacy of my generation. So with this, I would like to thank all of you for your attention, but not before I thank Dr. Anand Deshpande for a very philanthropic generous grant to me. I get my salary from that, and also Department of Science and Technology for the JC Bose Fellowship that I have. Thank you all very much.
The floor is now hello. The floor is now open for the question hour session. The interested participants can please raise their hands.
I'm sure you all got a lot of food for thought for 2047.
हेलो सर.
Questions, yes.
सर वेरी गुड इवनिंग सर. बहुत से सवाल थे मेरे जब आपको लेक्चर सुन रहा था मैं, तो उसमें से
अपना जब भी सवाल करो नाम भी बताओ.
सर माई सेल्फ लवकुश घावरी. सर मैं मोस्टली 4 क्वेश्चन पूछ रहा हूँ. बहुत से मतलब इतने लेक्चर. यस सर, मतलब डाउट थे मेरे.
1 and 4.
सर पूछ सकता हूँ? बिल्कुल सर, एक करके पूछूंगा. सर आपने कहा सर साइंस एंड टेक में सर हेल्थ एक आपने एक इशू बताया, तो सर मेरा हेल्थ पे पहला ही क्वेश्चन था ये. हम जब WHO की वेबसाइट पर जाते हैं तो WHO जब हेल्थ की डेफिनेशन देता है तो उसमें वो हेल्दी होने के 3 ट्राइड बताता है. वो जो फिजिकली हो, जो मेंटली हो, और तीसरा एक आता है सोशली हेल्दी. सोशली हेल्दी में आजकल से हम लोग देख रहे हैं जो पीपल है बहुत ज़्यादा सोशल मीडिया में लगे रहते हैं, लेकिन बहुत ज़्यादा सोशली एक्टिव होते नहीं है. मतलब साथ में अगर फैमिली के भी होते हैं तो भी वो फ़ोन में ही लगे रहते हैं. इनसे सर उसको मतलब जो मोबाइल है उनसे उनकी आंखें भी वीक होती हैं, और मतलब उसका जो माइक्रोवेव जो उनमें रेडिएशंस आते हैं मोबाइल से, उससे भी उनकी हेल्थ को बहुत मतलब बैड इफेक्ट पड़ता है, और मतलब सोशली वीक होते ही हैं वो। तो हम
एकदम सही कहा कि डब्ल्यूएचओ ने 4 पैरामीटर्स लगाए हुए हैं कि मेंटल हेल्थ, फिजिकल हेल्थ एंड सोशल हेल्थ, एंड एज यू सेड करेक्टली that social health is a recent phenomena because of the kind of thing that you are talking about. Even before that, I mean, a lot of people used to spend time watching TV or video games and things like that. But nonetheless, that's one of the things that we have to actually tackle with. And for that, what we should do as scientific community, we must engage with people who are involved in social sciences and things like that, and see how do we actually distract our children or our people in general away from all those distractions that they have, what the kind of thing that you are mentioning. But at the same time, social health and other things also are extremely important, mental health and social health. And in fact, mental health is actually taking its toll, is actually turning out to be kind of a epidemic in the country and all over the world at this moment. And one particular cause for that, one of the causes is the social isolation of people. You know, and what we have had in Indian tradition, as you would be aware, that we always grew up according to our traditions amongst our friends, joint families and all, and those traditions unfortunately are vanishing very rapidly. And if we are able to go back to our traditional roots once again, right, and learn the values of what our forefathers told, hopefully we'll be able to address some of those things effectively.
So one more,
Let me a little bit add to this. When India was the chair of G20 last year, the Science 20 engagement group was coordinated by INSA.
yes, sir.
And one of the components of Science 20 was holistic health.
Holistic health.
We were stressing, these 20 countries were stressing on holistic health. Holistic health would mean all of those things that you talked about, physical health, mental. And mental, of course, is becoming a big issue for us, all of us. And I, of course, in my initial remarks talked to you about the AMR and climate change. And we're going to be talking more about what we call climate sensitive diseases in times to come. And we will encourage you all to sort of look at the website of INSA and look into the document that we made during the G20 chair of India on holistic health.
Sir, can I ask one more question? One more question.
Just one more, and then we want to
Okay,
give
okay.
chance to
Definitely,
others.
sir.
And if we have time, then we'll come back to your remaining
ओके ओके
two.
सर हम लोग अभी सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल में आपने बात की, 17 सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल आपने बताया। सर हम लोग जितने भी सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल की जब बात करते हैं तो बस एक वो करते हैं, फॉर्मेलिटी से करते हैं कि हमें अवेयरनेस करनी है, फैलानी है। लेकिन सर मैंने देखा जो लोग अवेयर हैं वो भी कुछ नहीं कर रहे हैं। जो अवेयर नहीं है उनको तो हम लोग समझा सकते हैं कि ये मत करो, लेकिन जो ऑलरेडी अवेयर हैं, जैसे सभी लोग जानते हैं यहाँ पर कि सिगरेट पीना गलत है, लेकिन फिर भी बहुत से पढ़े लिखे लोग भी सिगरेट पीते हैं, कारपूलिंग नहीं करते हैं। मतलब एक इंसान अकेला इंसान है लेकिन एक ही कार में जा रहा है, इतनी सारी स्पेस घेर रहा है, रोड की पोल्यूशन कर रहा है। सर उस प्रॉब्लम कैसे टैकल करेंगे?
नहीं, ये सही कहा आपने कि लोगों को अवेयर तो ज़रूर कर रहे हैं हम लोग, लेकिन आपको ये भी पता होगा कि जैसे लोग अवेयर होते हैं, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा अवेयर होते रहेंगे इन चीज़ों के बारे में, तो हो सकता है कि लोग अपने आप उसमें कुछ इस तरह से कदम उठाए कि हम लोग उसको खुद के रोजी जीवन में उसको इस्तेमाल कर पाएंगे। तो ये होप है हमारी कि अगर अवेयरनेस बढ़ाने से लोग ये करेंगे। जैसे कि आपने देखा होगा कि प्लास्टिक का यूज़ काफ़ी हुआ करता था हर जगह, कि यहाँ पे ऐसे टेबल पे प्लास्टिक बोतलें रखा हुआ करती थी 10 साल पहले। आजकल उसका बहुत काफ़ी कम हो गया है। ये काफ़ी जगह जब हम लोग जाते हैं तो हम प्लास्टिक में नहीं बल्कि लेकिन ग्लासों में देखते हैं कि पानी।
सर कुल्हड़ की यूज़ क्यों नहीं करते?
कुल्हड़ भी कर सकते, ग्लास भी अच्छी है, ग्लास ऑल्सो इज ए सस्टेनेबल मटेरियल, सो उसमें कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। तो बेसिकली दे आर 4 फंडामेंटल प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट, 4 R's जो कहते हैं ना, रिड्यूस, रीयूज, रिसाइकल एंड रिफ्यूज। सो दिस आर द काइंड ऑफ थिंग दैट इफ यू यूज इस एवरी डे वी प्रॉबली विल बी एबल, और इफ यू स्टार्ट यूजिंग दैट, अगर हम उसको अपने आप इस्तेमाल करने लगे तो वी विल एक्चुअली हैव अचीव्ड लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स टुवर्ड्स क्लाइमेट मिटिगेशन।
Anybody else? Dr. Pentel, दीपक। नहीं, मैं इसके पहले थोड़ा सा बताना चाहता था। आई डोंट नो हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू गो फॉर ए मॉर्निंग वॉक। जाते हो आप लोग? पार्क में जाते हो? मैं तो रोज़ जाता हूँ। मेरे गुड़गांव में मेरे पास एक पार्क है, लेजर वैली पार्क, नाम बहुत अच्छा है, बहुत अच्छा पार्क भी है। हर मंडे मॉर्निंग, क्योंकि संडे छुट्टी होती है, पार्क के हर कोने में प्लास्टिक की थैलियाँ, वो चॉकलेट खाई तो रैपर पड़े हैं, सब पड़े, कुछ चेंज नहीं आया। तो ये अवेयरनेस तो चलती रहनी चाहिए। ये अवेयरनेस हम अगर बंद कर देंगे तो ये नहीं होगा। एंड यू नो पूरा द होल पार्क इज़ फुल ऑफ ऑल, एंड आई एम श्योर इट्स नॉट जस्ट द एग्जांपल दैट आई एम गिविंग। यू कैन गो टू एनी पार्क एंड पीपल कम इन द इवनिंग ऑन संडे, they eat, they have good time, and they drop everything over there, despite the fact that the litter boxes are there, पर उसमें नहीं डालेंगे।
I just want to make a couple of points. This is not to be taken by the younger generation to be discouraging at all, because I think ultimately we all feel that the future of the country is very bright, and it should be, with 1.6 billion, 1.4 right now, and maybe increasing in future. But I have some concerns which I want to point out here. You mentioned that academies should get together and make a document. Such a document was made about 2 years back, and was not really looked at very carefully. Maybe it was not sent to the right people. I don't know what it was. But the document made a couple of suggestions, one of which you must have heard from many places, and you would also like to perhaps see it implemented, is that India should at least spend 1% of its GDP on science and technology. We are currently spending 0.65. It is historically, for last 20 years, it is like that. A little bit, it was up, and then now, how can a country compete globally and solve problems with so little money being put into science and technology? We have people doing PhDs with very old-fashioned problems, neither learning any new techniques nor doing cutting research which would match us globally. So I think a fundamental thing which whether we are, and I don't think how we are missing out on bringing it to the attention of the government, that we desperately require raising funding for science and technology. Now, we may be good in many areas, I agree with you. We have a tendency to run ourselves down also. But being unrealistic is also not a good thing, because it can take us into something wishful thinking. We are weak in many areas, and we should accept that and train some of our young people, send them abroad. In fact, I had suggested that we should have 5,000 scientists minimum at PhD level and postdoc level going abroad to the best of the labs. Now, the current government has made a lot of good relations with the Western countries. We must utilize this space to train our people. We should not be happy that somebody has left and we say good riddance. I mean, that shows that we are not able to meet their intellectual demands and requirements, that people are leaving the country and not returning. So the third point I would like to make, which I think everybody should spend some time on, is how do we raise the standard of postdoctoral research and doctoral research? Because it is, if we have a ill-equipped PhD getting a job in a university at the age of 25, 26 or 28, let's say, and going up to the age of 65, and not knowing to deal with the current or the major problems which we have, which will not be solved by 20-year or 30-year-old technologies. Some of them may be, and we should do that, but a large number of them, like the big, we have such an energy deficit. How we are going to, what are we planning, how much money is required, what kind of training we require, We had the ambition from Baba's time to use thorium as a material. How far we have succeeded? Do we need to train young people in that area? So my request is that while the young people should keep their heads high, study hard, this is not to discourage them. I would have liked to have this dialogue more in your absence. But you should also know what the problems are. And I think I would request organizations like Vigyan Bharati also to, there are fairly influential people in that who have who think about the country, who want to take it forward. I think we need to think, and academies, I fully agree with you. The academies is not like you have become a member and everything is fine with you. What are we contributing? In terms of report writing, reaching out to the government. Even if we feel that the government is not listening, I think we should make attempts to reach up to them, because the goal which every government sets up requires science and technology, and our community should not be silent on that, but at least and should be very proactive. I'm sorry I didn't want to say, I think a lot of things you have said are very important, and so lots of good things have been done, but I wish that we do much more than what we are doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to tell all the students here, the person who spoke is Professor Deepak Pintal. He is one of the most iconic scientists of our generation. He has made this GM mustard, which is an absolute achievement for Indian science. So it's a privilege to have him here. It's a great privilege to have Professor Pental in the audience today. What the points he made, actually, I agree upon all of them. India must increase the investment in science. That's the first point. For increasing the investment in science, I would just like to point out that our industries doesn't spend as much time, as much effort and resources on S&T as what we wish them to be. And that's one of the drawbacks that what we have had, and we are actually still trying to work with the industry and trying to see how they increase that. The second point that he made about training people in certain areas, and certain areas we do lack depth of knowledge, which is absolutely true. Although we have done some fantastically well in many areas, but there are many areas in which we don't have the same depth of knowledge as what we would like to have, and for that we must actually collaborate with West and other countries very closely. So that point also is very well taken. And the third point, of course, what he said, I completely agree with. Thank you, Professor Pental.
You know, Dr. Deepak Pental is known as the excellent, eminent geneticist. For the sake of the young audience over here, he was the former Vice Chancellor of the University of Delhi, a very good friend of ours for a very long time, and he always speaks through the heart. What he was telling you was that the total expenditure that India does in S&T, science and technology, is only 0.7% of its GDP, whereas the global mean, Deepak, is around 1.6 or 1.7, and there are countries which spend much higher than that. So I think we have to really match up with that, and this will happen with the the more and more young people coming up into science and all, and I'm sure it will happen. I'm a bit more optimistic on that. Yes, short question.
Yeah.
And there will be a sharp answer.
Right. Sir, you pointed about the uplifting of poor people 40 crore rupees, 40 crore. And our Prime Minister assured 80 crore people 5 years free food. And at the same time, clothes and housing is in big number. If we compare with China, the way they have grown, this is really remarkable. And the way Professor Pental pointed out, our scientists prefer to stay back to USA or Europe. They don't come back, and China, they come back and they contribute a lot in their economy and GDP. So why not to do something so that the poverty, which is really inequality is going very fast. 1% people have 40% of our revenue. So this huge inequality is a big issue. And that can be resolved by only science and technology. If we have our scientists back in India, they can do a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any answer to that, but I do agree with you that we need more younger people addressing these problems such as poverty alleviation, and we do hope that the generation which is sitting here in the audience would take these problems in the right spirit and start addressing them in the correct manner.
Question from this young group over here. Yeah. Stand up and tell us your name and where do you come from.
A very pleasant good afternoon, sir. I am Ashita from Andhra Education Society, Dr. Durgabai Deshmukh Senior Secondary School. So my question to you is, you have talked about COVID-19. आपने COVID-19 का जिक्र किया और उस समय अच्छे से अच्छे हॉस्पिटल्स फेल हो चुके थे लोगों को अच्छे से ट्रीट करने में और उनको एडमिट करने में. हमने उस दौर के बाद ऐसा कौन सा मेजर्स लिए हैं जो आगे चल के अगर ऐसी कोई महामारी आती है तो हम उसको अच्छे से सॉल्व कर सके. थैंक यू.
बेटा बहुत अच्छा सवाल किया आपने. और ये जो कोविड-19 के प्रॉब्लम आई थी ये डेल्टा वेव के टाइम में ज़्यादा आई थी, सेकंड वेव एज यू कॉल. और ये वो सिर्फ प्रॉब्लम इंडिया में नहीं आई थी, सब जगह आई थी. मैं आपको बताना चाहता हूँ जब कोविड आया था I started writing articles for Hindustan Times on host immunity and COVID-19. मैंने कभी न्यूज़पेपर के लिए नहीं लिखा था उसके पहले. तो पहला मैंने आर्टिकल लिखा था एंड इट केम अप ऑन 1 अप्रैल 2020. और मैंने 3 कारण बताए थे कि इंडिया में COVID-19 इतना सीवियर नहीं रहेगा कंपेयर टू आवर वेस्टर्न काउंटर पार्ट्स. एक तो ये बताया था कि हमारी पॉपुलेशन में डाइवर्सिटी बहुत ज़्यादा है. नंबर 2, हम लोग वी आर ऑल द टाइम सराउंडेड बाय माइक्रोब्स. जितना माइक्रोबियल लोड इस सब कॉन्टिनेंट में है वहाँ नहीं है, तो हमारी इम्यूनिटी ज़्यादा स्ट्रॉन्गर है. और वो प्रूव हुआ. हमारी पॉपुलेशन साइज़ को देखते हुए अगर इतनी डेथ्स हुई हैं एंड इफ़ यू कंपेयर विद द अदर्स, इफ यू कंपेयर विद हमारे बहुत ज़्यादा कम हुई. लेकिन आपका जो सवाल था बहुत अच्छा था. उसमें हमने सीखा क्या? कुछ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट हुई. यस हुई, काफ़ी हुई. और नॉट ओनली इंडिया में, क्योंकि इस तरह की पेंडेमिक को फाइट करने के लिए सिर्फ एक कंट्री का काम नहीं रहेगा. अनलेस वी वैक्सीनेट द लास्ट मैन ऑन दिस ग्लोब, पेंडेमिक नहीं जाएगा. यू सॉ दैट द थर्ड वेव, सेकंड वेव originated from India. Maybe some people who came from UK over here and all that, then Delta wave and all that. That's a big kahani. The third wave came from South Africa or African continent over there, where there were immunodeficiencies and things of that sort. Omicron, as you call it. So unless we vaccinate everybody around the world, India ने अपनी वैक्सीन बनाई और इंडिया ने कम से कम 100 कंट्रीज़ को वैक्सीन दिया फ्री. इसी तरह से औरों ने भी दिया और वो ही करना पड़ेगा. और कुछ थोड़ा सा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में इम्प्रूवमेंट डेफिनेटली आया है. यू कैन सी द रिपोर्ट ऑफ द यूनिसेफ चिल्ड्रन जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, उन्होंने कहा कि इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट हो गया काफ़ी और ये हमारे टुमारोज चिल्ड्रन के लिए बड़ा अच्छा रहेगा. ये एक पॉजिटिव उन्होंने मेंशन किया कि इसका फॉल आउट था कि इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर सब जगह पर काफ़ी हुआ. तो हुआ, लेकिन प्रॉब्लम्स आर मैमथ. पॉपुलेशंस आर ग्रोइंग. टुडे वी हैव क्रॉस्ड, अभी लास्ट वीक हिंदुस्तान टाइम्स में एक आर्टिकल आया था दैट इंडिया इज पॉपुलेशन इज नाउ 1.44 बिलियन. वी हैव क्रॉस्ड चाइना विच इज़ 1.43. वी हैव वन फ्रॉम चाइना, राइट?
Namaskar. I'm Dr. Alok Mishra. Basically, I'm a Joint Secretary, Association of Indian Universities. First of all, I really want to congratulate the leadership of Dr. Pandey sir. That's a wonderful lecture. I want a big clap for the sir. That was really, we used to listen, but in short span of time, the way you, with energy you delivered, that was really touched too many points. And because this forum is for question and something, and I'm very happy that my professor, I was used to names, Delhi. So when the one was physiology, sir was in anatomy there, the one was the leader, legend here, that who really developed and is gifted. So we're proud, sir. After a long time, I'm really to find you here. So this is a science forum, and we are really to discuss about specifically to 1947 to again seeing to 2047. And recently we National Vice Chancellors meet was in Hyderabad. We call all Vice Chancellor for this theme. And that was rightly one point that, as you mentioned in the presentation, that like SDG goal is start from poverty. I think this thing, all 5-year plan, always poverty were there. And cooperation come on 17 point. जो 17वां गोल है उसका वो कॉपरेशन है. मुझे लगता है, मैं एक साइकोलॉजिस्ट डॉक्टर और होने के नाते मुझे लगता है कि जो पहला होना चाहिए, हमें यूनाइट और कोऑपरेट होना चाहिए. हम नेगेटिव पॉइंट को ऊपर रख करके और चीज़ों को कर रहे हैं. तो मुझे लगता है कि दैट्स मे बी सम इंडियन प्रोस्पेक्टिव की वसुधैव कुटुंबम के थॉट से हम फिर वी स्टार्ट थिंकिंग समथिंग. सो देयर इज कॉपरेशन इज मीटिंग इनिशियली, वी स्टार्ट प्रॉब्लम देन कम टू कॉपरेशन, दैट्स है ना. सो एक फर्स्ट पहला पॉइंट पॉवर्टी, लास्ट पॉइंट कॉपरेशन एंड हाउ टू कोऑपरेट इट. तो आई थिंक दैट इज दिस इज मे बी द यूएन हैड डिसाइडेड समथिंग, बट is a need to first think that we should unite and ignite inside. I think this your lecture maybe that maybe people around the nation, maybe this is maybe I think that's, you can forward the clip, people may aware about the problem. So one thing that sir rightly mentioned, that need to aware the people, and slowly aware, then you automatically to start following. So there is a, it's called behavior SDGs should you follow. हमारे कहते हैं कि बिहेवियर बेस्ड सेफ्टी होनी चाहिए, बिहेवियर बेस्ड इन्वायरमेंट प्रोटेक्शन होना चाहिए, नॉट टू समथिंग गिव अस डूज एंड डोंट्स. इट शुड बी लाइक कल्चर. हाउ वी गोइंग टू मेक अ कल्चर? इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट. इट इज नॉट वी नो समथिंग नॉट टू डू. टू रिस्पेक्ट टू एल्डर्स, इट अ कल्चर. Respect to the environment is a culture. We are somehow missing the culture to protect the people around. So this thing, to make maybe after this lecture something, maybe circulation for the all universities too, how can really do basically to it's not like to teach ethics in the class and people feel that people are ethical. It's never be. It should be in aims, like we the Indian professors used to come. You should be honest when you are with the patient. Is not like it's not one day. So the seeing the eyes, that is, you have to be honest what you're doing. You should devote yourself. Small the gestures really to make this way. So I think that's to need to call such type lecture for all university heads, basically invite all vice chancellors also lecture. At least not come, but at least send the clips of this thing to where people have not time to see that. Sometime social media can play a good role also to aware the people, but same time what to see, what not to see. It is also you have to develop a cognition. So one thing that how you planning for this thing, like sensitize for the right people. So a plan in this direction. Second, this is basically about diabetes. Sir is mentioned about like aware about and then come to this thing.
वो बहुत ही बढ़िया स्टडी थी. मैं जरा एक यंग ग्रुप को चांस देना चाहता हूँ.
So this is Viksit.
एक लड़की ने तो सवाल किया, बॉयज क्यों क्वाइट हैं? One more girl over there. Please go ahead. There is one hand over there.
Good evening, sir. My name is Aparna and I am from Andhra School. My question is, as you say, we are the future of the country and for the welfare of the country. But I think in young generation, there is a mindset of looking cool. How are we going to fight with that? I don't think, I really feel most of people of my age, kids of my age, are busy being cool while realizing their duty towards country or school or home. How are we going to fight?
See, thank you for asking this question. But I don't find any contradiction in looking cool and trying to do something for the society. See, looking cool is one part of our way of building confidence in ourselves. When you want to really look cool, you are actually carrying some kind of aura or personality or confidence in yourself that you will be able to do anything that you are asked to do. Or you will be able to do something which is out of the world. That's one part of that. So I don't necessarily find any contradiction in that. But I agree with you. When you are really looking cool or carrying that confidence, you should also do something very positive for your surroundings and environment and society and so forth. So I do agree with that. Thanks.
Cool is good anyway. There was a hand there. Yeah, please.
Good evening, sir. My name is Soha Shadab and I'm from Andhra School. So my question is, sir, as you know that we are the bright future of our country, we are the youngsters and and most of the youngsters are suffering from depression and stress issues, whether they are from their family, the society, etc. So what do you think how science and technology can deal with this problem? Because I think become healthy from the mind is the main thing for any future.
Now, what you pointed out is an issue that I think everybody is kind of confronted with today in our society. Issues related to mental health are certainly on the rise in recent times, and there are people who actually train others or society in general that how do we actually overcome the difficulties that people face who are facing these challenges of mental health or something like that. All that we can do is basically carry ourselves as a united society, try to look for people around us who may possibly be either depressed or whatever, or facing certain issues with their mental health, and make sure that when we carry them with us, they actually find positivity around them. So that's a collective responsibility of a society together. So we can't leave people alone to fight that particular issue. So we as a society have a responsibility towards those people who might actually have issues with their mental health. Maybe Dr. Mehra might have a better answer.
I mean, she raised a very important point, of course, because the competition has grown. Competition is growing. During my time, when I was your age, the only thing that we needed to do was I want to become either a doctor or an engineer. हमें उस दो चीज़ों के अलावा कुछ पता ही नहीं होता था. Today you have many more avenues. I think there is a need for the youngsters, young children like you, to look into yourself and look and explore the talent that you have. You don't have to follow your neighbor there. Earlier we used to follow our neighbors. अरे यार वो बनने वाला इंजीनियर तो मैं क्या करूँगा. तो अब वो ज़माना रहा नहीं. Nowadays, I see a lot of the young children want to go to only the corporate kind of jobs and businesses and all that. Startups, as you see that in 2015, there were only 100 startups over there, and today there are more than 120,000 startups. So, the whole thing is changing. ये डिप्रेशन जो आप कह रहे हो ये आती है because you feel मेरे में इतनी क्षमता नहीं. क्षमता सब में होती है. All that you need to do is you have to look into yourself and see what is the best in you. Sometimes you're good in singing, musically. You can see, or maybe jokes. कपिल शर्मा देखो कहाँ से कहाँ आ गया. और सब लोग देखते हैं उसको सारा दिन शाम को सिर्फ जोक्स पे ही वहाँ से वहाँ आ गए. तो there you have today you have really openings far more than we had at that time. So please look into yourself. You only can help yourself. Anybody else? There was a question. There was a hand there. Yes.
Good evening, sir. I am Arifa Khurshid from Andhra School, and I'm in 12th grade right now. So this is my last year at school. So my question is that it's been 16 years of my existence. And since I was young, the two things which were glorified by the elders was...
Even now you're young.
Yeah, I am young, but when I was more younger, so it was glorified that when we grow up, we need to get a good degree, get a good job, and get settled in life. So this generation, when you talk about the development, you said that interest. You need interest to, follow the things where you are. You had interest, that's why you are here. But this generation is not interested. And this is somewhere a fault which I see is of our education system too. As you said that Indian parents especially wants a family member to be a doctor, but they don't want to go to a doctor. मतलब उन्हें डॉक्टर चाहिए, but डॉक्टर किस चीज़ के लिए चाहिए is to show out of. Why do they need an engineer? Is to show it off again. So this show off culture is something which lessen the interest of us. So since the school days, we are reading the same textbook, the same things with not a inch of creativity or innovation in it, like the same brackets of things written in it and from our parents and teachers. So I just wanted to ask that to change that bookish interest to something which is practical, how can we change it? Because what
Yes, I think I will understand your question right. That what you say to some extent is correct. That a lot of people actually are still looking into something which will lead to a stable job or good life or settle down, as what you said, something like that. But that's entirely upon us. Us means even include youngsters like you, that what you want to choose to do. All right. So our advice always to younger generation is do what interests you and not what interests your parents or your teachers or your peers or something. I want to give you one example. There was a student in my lab. He was pursuing a dual degree in BITS Pilani. BITS Pilani has this dual degree program. He was going to be engineer. At the same time, he was also going to be MSc Physics. Both these things he was doing there. And BITS Pilani, we had, I was at the Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnostics in Hyderabad. And BITS Pilani and us, we had a MOU that they would spend 1 year in our lab. Some students every year, 2-3 students would come and spend 1 year in our lab. So there was this student who came and spent a year in my lab. But he was not interested in doing any project. So my lab, where he told him that, you have come here for doing a project, which is a formal requirement for you to get a dual degree from BITS Pilani. He was not interested. So I asked him कि क्या हो रहा है? So he said कि सर my parents ने मेरे को यहाँ पे आने के लिए force किया है. मैं एक खुद entrepreneur बनना चाहता हूँ. तो I said कि बनो, बड़ी खुशी से बनो. Who is going to stop you? And I told him that as a project, you write a project and discuss with me that how you can be a successful entrepreneur. Because a successful entrepreneur, you cannot be alone, because you also need a knowledge of someone who has a good knowledge of finance, somebody who has good knowledge of management and things like that. And he actually took that. He said कि सर काफ़ी अच्छे ये है सुझाव है आपने किए हुए. So he started working on that. In the end, he wrote some project, he got his degree and went away. Then I lost contact with him. For about 10 years, I was not in contact with him. But he had actually picked up the first steps of entrepreneurship in my lab. 10 years later, one of my students who was his contemporary in the lab and asked me a question, and it is unbelievable, okay, this unbelievable question. He said, sir, do you know who is the owner of Swiggy? Oh. So there's a person called Nandan Reddy who started Swiggy, was my student in my lab. And he had passion to actually become entrepreneur and not engineer or a physicist. Right? So follow your passion and you will do well in your life.
Follow your passion. Look into the Google and see how many type of jobs can you have. Yes, please. Is there any other youngster who has a hand up? Yeah, he's not that young.
Good afternoon.
Younger than you, but is not all that young.
Sorry, sir. Very good afternoon. The lecture on Viksit Bharat at the rate 2047, it was very brilliant. And by 2047, I think China will become very ashamed of India because of population. So my question is that by the time of 2047, we are actually looking forward to the development in the field of science and technology. And of course, it is the CSIR contribution in it. The point is that with the increase in population, the sustainability of life on the earth depends totally on natural resources. In your lecture, it was clearly shown one of the natural resources like water is depleting very fast. So let us not go into dwell into that thing. Let us go into the energy sector. In energy sector, we will be needing to replace fossil fuels. And hydrogen fuel is one of the most important scope for in this matter. And my question is that is CSIR or Council or the science institutes are doing anything in particular to develop this technology, and when this hydrogen fuel will completely replace the fossil fuels in India? In India.
So, in fact, CSIR is the leader in India's hydrogen mission. So, when we were writing the hydrogen mission of India about 3 years ago, the mandate came for all the R&D on CSIR. So, Daswata is here. He's also a part of that particular hydrogen mission. Now he's in IIT Delhi, of course. But thing is that there are different kinds of hydrogen. You know, I mean, you see that there is something called a grey hydrogen, which is made from some of the fossil fuels, so it's not very clean. There's something called a green hydrogen, which actually you split water, and then it doesn't leave any carbon dioxide impact on the thing when you actually make a green hydrogen. There's also something called a gold hydrogen. A gold hydrogen is the one which actually you can tap directly from the earth. Beneath the earth, there is a lot of plenty of reserves of hydrogen that can be tapped. Now, there are three different questions on hydrogen economy. Number one, how do you generate hydrogen in any of these mechanisms that I told you, right? So that it leaves minimum impact. There is a research question number one. Number two, how do you store hydrogen? On today's date, if you want to store hydrogen, you need something like a pressure of about 700 psi. Is that correct, Sudha? About 700 psi, you need pressure to store hydrogen, and that's a challenge. Number three, how do you use it, right? And on all the three fronts, CSIR actually has very active programs, and in fact I showed you very briefly the bus that CSIR along with KPIT had made, and that bus actually has been successfully shown to run on the roads in Pune, that particular one. And the ambition of the National Chemical Laboratory, which is the CSIR laboratory in Pune, is to run passenger buses between Pune and Mumbai on hydrogen in the next 2 years. And country has also defined its aspirations, saying that hydrogen mission something called 212. Essentially numbers means that production of hydrogen should be less than $2 a kg. On today's date is about $5 a kg and things like that. Return on investment in 2 years or things like that. So CSIR has a very, very active program, but there are many others who are also involved in hydrogen mission of India.
Hello, sir.
After him, you, and then you, and that's about all.
Okay, Shekhar.
Hello.
That's a, of course, as usual, very nice lecture from you. Two questions I have. One is path to progress. If you see some examples in the world, let's say Japan or Korea in the Eastern Bloc, or the Western Bloc, let's say Germany, if I see the path to progress, all the parameters that generally we look for, is by 2047, which is almost like 23 years from now, and it not necessarily that India would progress in the same way that Japan did or Korea did or Germany did, but could be different. But is it known to us or from a sociologist or from anybody that whether the path to progress India on the right course, that we become Viksit Bharat by 2047? That's one first question. And second question, what Professor Pentel had talked about, but I would like to emphasize, if you see these countries that I've just talked about, the kind of discipline is there in general public, the responsibility that they have in the general public, anybody, everybody, you just pick anybody from the road, he would know that what means to be a Japanese and what I need to do for the country. Anybody can do that. Probably we cannot do that in India. So probably these things comes from the school education. Although we can, in our forum, we can talk about higher education, PhD, postdocs, but where we are lacking possibly is the school education. And so where we, probably government need to put more money, that Professor Pentel was talking about the GDP, the percentage. And of course, you said that R&D money should come from the industry. And that together maybe the GDP percentage in total education could be about 1% or could be about 1.6%. So these two fronts, the school education and the first question, maybe you can.
Yeah, so the first question about path to progress, I think what we have seen in recent times is the governments have had actually very clear idea of what would be our future course of this thing, so that we become a developed nation. And in that particular respect, therefore, the government has actually put in a lot of, first of all, welfare schemes, things like Ayushman Bharat and Prime Minister's Awas Yojana and all. These are welfare schemes that have been put up, but also to promote employment among younger people. Government is acutely aware that a number of government jobs or number of private industry jobs are limited, and our economy is going to be dominated always by informal sector, and therefore government is actually very actively promoting things like startups and innovation and things like that, and they are actually going to be the drivers for job creation for the future, is what most of us believe. For example, a startup not only provides a job for himself or herself, a person, but also creates jobs for others if successful. And if we are able to promote innovation spirit such as that in the country, and what I said today is that the innovation is based on science and technology, I think that particular path to progress becomes clearer in that particular sense. So you correctly said that different countries may have different path, but what we have chosen because of our own challenges, the number of people and the population and educating the population and everything, that path could be only achieved by multiple different things that the government is doing currently. And we have seen some spectacular examples in recent times of that progress, what we call quote unquote, absolutely spectacular. Could you have imagined 10 years ago that entire passport system in India would be digitized and it would be so easy to apply for a passport? Would we have imagined 10 years ago that we would be making payments through our mobile phones and we don't have to carry cash and card anyway? Would we have imagined 10 years ago that the entire country would have had an Aadhaar card? Yes, absolutely. As we go through our lives, we actually don't realize how much whatever path had been chosen at that particular point in time and how it has been implemented has led to some phenomenal success. We just don't look back upon those successes, unfortunately, as much as what we would have loved to. Second question, of course, is very pertinent about school education. School education is extremely important. These are formative years, all the people here. And in school education, actually, we must give holistic education, and that's essentially the National Education Policy 2020 is all about. How do we provide that? And as we speak, we are in the process of writing textbooks for schools and things like that. And the entire emphasis has been to provide holistic knowledge. So if you want to become a scientist, science is not alone that should be taught. Then many other things that actually also need to be taught along with science, At the same time, we should also be aware of our glorious traditions and things like that. So in the correct perspective, if you see, if we are able to produce, if we were able to provide curriculum which is holistic, in a language that the students can understand and follow very easily, and make more emphasis on experiential learning, then rather than mugging from the books or something like that, all these things put together, NEP 2020 actually defines that particular path for school education for future. And I hope that will yield some good results in the next 20 years.
Yes.
Good evening, sir.
There, no, 1 minute. The question, yeah, please go ahead.
No, this person is already up.
No, I think she raised her hand earlier. Yeah, please go ahead. Stand up and tell us about where are you from. भाई साहब माइक अपनी इनको दे देंगे, आपकी बारी बाद में आएगी. अरे भाई इनको माइक चला के दिखा दो ना. कहाँ चले जाते हैं माइक वाले लोग.
Good evening, sir. I, Pujita of Andhra Education Society School. I want to ask that how can we redefine the boundaries of human potential through innovative applications of science and technology?
See, innovation actually exists all over the place. And how one realizes the potential of innovation is essentially create a conducive atmosphere where people are able to realize their own potential, right? Only then we will be able to do that. And there are plenty of different examples. Okay, I will give you an example for instance, a very, very old example that's existed in our country since something like 6th or 7th century. So have you been to Himalayas anytime? No. If you go to the foothills of Himalayas, you see there's plenty of water which is flowing down in many places, right? Now people for time immemorial, they have grown grains in their fields, right? गेहूँ, चावल, all those things. और उसका आटा बनाना होता है. तो आटा हम लोग कैसे बनाते हैं? हम लोग चक्की में जाते हैं ना. चक्की देखिए कभी. So we take our गेहूँ to चक्की and make आटा. In the hills, they realize that water which is falling down has the potential to rotate a wheel, so that you don't have to आटा ऐसे पीसना नहीं होता है हाथ से. वो पानी से ही हो जाता है. And they actually made water mills like that. Is Bharat. Now that is innovation. That when you see water falling down and realize that this force of water can be used for something which is useful, आटा बनाने में जैसे इस example में, that exactly is what is innovation meant for. And as long as you're curious about yourself all around, and if you think that you can innovate about certain things and put that to practical use, and you have a conducive atmosphere to do that, you will be able to actually do that very easily. And a number of different mechanisms, number of different ways that people actually do that. I have given you only one example. We can go on talking about innovation multiple different times. But thing is, basically we have to produce an atmosphere which is conducive to promote that. And that's exactly what we are trying to do at this moment, the entire country.
Thank you. This is the last one.
Yes. Yeah. Good evening, sir. I am Amir from Andhra School. Sir, I want to ask, why do you think it is that much necessary to add a patriotic theme in this topic? मतलब मैं ये क्यों नहीं कह सकता मैं साइंस के लिए कुछ करना चाहता हूँ. मतलब आप लोग इतना इस चीज़ पे क्यों एम्फेसिस दे रहे हैं कि हमें देश के साथ साइंस के लिए कुछ करना है?
देखो ऐसी बात है कि हर चीज़ करने में कुछ ना कुछ मोटिवेशन की ज़रूरत है. ठीक है, मोटिवेशन ऐसे आ सकता है कि हमें पूरे मानव जात के लिए कुछ करना है, हमें अपने पर्यावरण के लिए कुछ करना है,
रिलीजियस कम्युनिटी के लिए.
हाँ, तो हम लोग मान सकते हैं कि पूरी दुनिया एक है, हमें दुनिया के लिए कुछ करना है, वहाँ से मोटिवेशन आ सकता है. लेकिन यू विल एग्री विथ मी कि वन ऑफ द बेस्ट मोटिवेशंस दैट कैन एक्चुअली कम फ्रॉम इज द पीपल अराउंड यू हु वुड मोटिवेट टू डू यू बेटर. All the people, your friends, your relatives, your neighbors, all of them actually motivate you to do something for them, so that you can give whatever you have learned in your education system, you can give back to them in a very positive sense. Alright, so when you actually do that, essentially the same concept expands into a nation. And when it expands into a nation, and when we look back upon what we were once and what actually we are now, there's a huge difference. And then you start wondering that why we were such a great nation at one point of time, and why we were actually deprived of everything at some point of time. You start actually feeling bad. And that becomes a motivating factor. Right? And therefore, as a nation, if you are patriotic, ठीक है, अगर हमारे मन में अगर बहुत देशभक्ति है, so वो हमें हमारी मन की जो भावना है उसे पूरा जागरूक करती है कि हमें देश के लिए कुछ करना है, कर दिखाना है. And that's a major मोटिवेटिंग फैक्टर.
मेन ऑब्जेक्टिव जो है वो ये मोटिवेट करना. अगर कोई यहाँ पर देश की जगह रिलीजन के नाम पे करे तो वो भी परफेक्ट
नहीं. रिलीजन को हम थोड़ा अलग रखेंगे.
क्यों? हम
हमारे देश को करेंगे. रिलीजन क्या ऐसा है कि रिलीजन के कंसेप्ट अलग अलग होते हैं ना. कुछ फिर ऐसा होता है कि एक आदमी कहेगा कि मेरी रिलीजन आपके रिलीजन से
मोटिवेटिंग फैक्टर. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट मोटिवेटिंग फैक्टर. आप कह रहे हैं ना मोटिवेटिंग फैक्टर होना चाहिए.
कल्चर एंड रिलीजन एंड ऑल काइंड ऑफ इंटरमिक्स्ड इन दैट पर्टिकुलर रिस्पेक्ट, बट देश इज वन थिंग व्हिच कैन बी बाइंडिंग फैक्टर in the entire population, and that can motivate us actually to better for the country.
No sir, not binding factor. You talked about motivating factor.
That's right. So motivation comes from binding amongst different people.
No, what if someone shares his ethnicity with religion only, means not with...
See, ethnicity and religion and all are very difficult concepts to go through. For example, let us say if you were in some of the Western countries, and somebody says, because my skin color is so and so, and your skin color is so and so, and my skin color is superior to you. Now, if that kind of feeling comes in anybody's mind, the science tells you clearly that feeling is wrong.
How?
A person with a particular skin color cannot be superior to another person with another skin color. The abilities of both the persons are identical.
No
Right?
means-
Equality. Equality. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I think with this, every good thing come to an end. We need to really close this. Please have a seat. Have a seat. Sit down. And sure, I think question answer sessions are done. Somebody asked the question about China, China's population and India's population. As I said, we are 1.44, they have become 1.43. But the mathematical calculation done by them, they said by 2100, China will be 0.91. India is not going to do that bad, 1.44 to 1.51. This is the mathematical calculation that they have made. That by 2100, we will probably become 1.51. I don't know how they did, but this is a diagram I saw. Thank you very much. Thank you for your interaction.
I thank the audience for putting forth such thought-provoking questions on dais for discussion and deliberation. I extend our heartiest gratitude to Dr. Shekhar Mande for taking out time from his hectic schedule and marking this spectacular evening with his gracious presence, revitalizing us with his expertise and erudition. Sir, your insights and detailed proficiency of the Sustainable Development Goals and India's plans to propose the solutions to these agendas in the global platform will surely establish us as Vishwaguru Bharat. Sir, your honorary address inspired the young minds about the prominence of the Sanskrit verse Vidya Dhanam Sarva Dhanam Pradhanam. With knowledge, passion and multidimensional education, Bharat will surely witness the trajectory of Viksit Bharat. With this, I now request Professor Narendra Mehra, Vice President, International Affairs, INSA, to present the honorary token of gratitude to our esteemed chief guest, Dr. Shekhar Mande. I now invite Dr. Brajesh Pandey, Executive Director, Indian National Science Academy, to present the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon. I think it is a very successful talk, and all of you must agree because talk was 40 minutes and interaction was 50 minutes. So that is a different dimension. So I think there is a big round of applause for speaker as well as the audience also. Today we have mixed generation. We have some senior people, we have school kids, and at both age, what are different type of question we have witnessed. Students have different type of their career perspective and what they are going to develop in their career, and at the same time those who are very senior, their thought and their question are related to the world is India, that is the national problem, that how we can cater all those things. So this kind of discussion, interaction, for this we have started this INSA Distinguished Public Lecture Series, in which we are inviting very, very eminent personality to interact with student as well as the different age group of the people. This video, this is already all live on YouTube, and it will be remain available on YouTube for anybody. That link will be shared as sir was saying. So here sir has said from starting from holistic health or small problem to the community, that is all the sustainable development goal, how they are going to, and for all these school kids, they may have heard about what is the sustainable development goals, but today I think you have clear your idea what are the different goals and how they are, how the world is trying to come up or find the solution for that. And that solution, it is not going to be found in one day. You also have to contribute in that particular solution for all these sustainable development goals. Okay. So this is वो क्या कहते हैं ना, लास्ट में एक अपनी रिचुअल्स होते हैं कि एक धन्यवाद प्रस्ताव देना होता है. तो आप सभी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद जो आए हैं यहाँ पे लेक्चर के लिए. हम लोग हर महीने एक ऐसा लेक्चर करते हैं, आप लोगों के पास सूचनाएं जाएंगी और इसी तरह से और लेक्चर होते हैं और आप अपना समय निकाल करके यहाँ पे आएँ. So, first of all, I thank Professor Mande sir for finding out the time and giving this very beautiful, I can say this is very ground work, that is all the audience, student or everybody can understand and ask this type of question. Thanks to Professor Mehra for being here and gracing this occasion. All the student and the audience, our senior INSA fellows, those who are here, I thanks all of them. This program or this kind of program is not happen in one day. My INSA team is working since I think 10-15 days in fact for each of the program, reaching out to the school, and this is starting from my Deputy Executive Director Sunil Jokarkar to Malhotra ji, Seema Mandal, VK Rajput, Madhavan ji, Aditya, Jain, Ananya, and there are so many other people, those who are working from last 10 days to make it successful, and we can see lot of audience. As you know, we are not an academic institute where students are coming every day to study. Still, for this kind of lecture, the attendance is good, and that we can say we are successfully going in our goal that we have one lecture and many people will attend, and we will contribute towards the propagation of science for science and society. So thank you all of you, and I think we have a Rashtragan, so after that we will have some announcement.
I request the audience and everyone to please stand up for the national anthem.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
I now request the audience, distinguished guests and colleagues to please disperse for the reimbursement. Thank you. Dear audience, please accommodate yourself outside this hall for the refreshments. Thank you.